Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy News Beat Weekly Stand-Up. This is the weekly recap. The staff has picked the best stories for the week, and I mean, this is crazy. This is February 1st. I hope you are ready for a fantastic weekend. Michael and I are going to be at NAPE this next week, and it is just going to be crazy. So buckle up, hang on, and we've got a new sponsor coming on, Reese Consulting. We are just really excited about it. So if you want to sponsor other portions of the podcast, let us know. But we sure are glad to have our first big sponsor of 2025 announcement coming up at NAPE. Thanks. Buckle up and enjoy the show. President Trump reignites coal industry at Davos. I think he lit a fuse under the world elite and said, "We don't need you anymore."
He really was wagging his finger. I mean, the whole speech, and then Javier Millar, president of Argentina, basically came in and said the same thing.
He said what he said. Unbelievable. In classic Trump fashion, the president declared the World Economic Forum, nothing can destroy coal, not the weather, not a bomb. It's a great backup. What this really means is that in Trump's stance on coal isn't new, but let's be honest, it's sitting in the back seat as oil and gas steal the energy spotlight. Yet this fresh endorsement has reminded not just Davos, but the world isn't ready to get rid of coal. President Trump is actually shining a light on grid stability around the world, saying we have to have baseline electricity. You can't throw haphazard renewals at a grid and have it function normally.
Yep.
We laugh about make coal great again. It's actually make the grid stable again.
Yes, I could not agree more with that analysis. And you think about the quote that he said. Let's go back to what you first said. So this is the quote out of Davos. Nothing can destroy coal, not weather, not a bomb. It's a great, and here's the key word, backup. It never should be your main supply for a few different reasons, but it's a great backup to ensure baseload energy supply. China knows it. Some people in the United States know it. Europe certainly doesn't know it. But, I completely agree. The make coal great again movement, I wouldn't say make coal great again. I would say make coal back up again. That would be my phrase.
Well, that's a good way to do it. I think that is a great one. Stargate's first data center is underway in Texas. Public filings show how much it will cost to build. $500 billion AI project with Stargate earlier. The first data center is in Abilene. I'm going to go take a few pictures of it with Oracle CTO Larry Ellison, and public filings for Abilene matching Ellison's description shed some light on costs. An estimated campus on this is now $1.1 billion. That's a lot of servers.
That's a lot. So what is Stargate? It's a joint venture between Oracle, OpenAI, and SoftBank. If that doesn't make the hair on your neck stand up a little bit, it gets worse because they're pledging to spend $500 billion on AI data centers. There was some real spooky stuff that they were talking about. Specifically, they were being able to create mRNA vaccines in minutes. Yeah, I'll probably be avoiding using those. A little bit more about this project. Basically, it's called Project Ludicrous. It's a 1,000-acre site. Some other things is we've, basically each building is about 500,000 square feet. There are 10 buildings currently being built, and we'll expand to 20 and other locations beyond Abilene. It is interesting that the owner of Project Ludicrous is listed as Abilene DC1 LC, an affiliate data center of startup Caruso Energy, which we love them. They're ex oil and gas folks who created kind of off-grid database solutions using flared gas in North Dakota. They've since expanded off of there. Super interesting, super interesting what they're doing. But on one hand, I think, yes, we need to be investing huge amounts of money into this. On the other hand, some of the stuff that's come out that Sam Altman and Larry Ellison have said about the goal of Stargate is absolutely creepy. And
it scares
with
me to
the
death.
With the release of DeepSeek this week, having spent basically in the millions of dollars, I'm talking less than $10 million to train DeepSeek's open source model, which is, yes, it's Chinese based, but on par and even better than ChatGPT. Some estimates have said it's cost over $1.5 billion to develop that algorithm when it comes to the infrastructure and the people to build that. And DeepSeek's now come out with a better AI model for less than $10 million. It makes you wonder, 500 billion. Wonder why all that money?
Exactly. There is close ties to several three-letter agencies that I do not trust. So we will just leave it at that. I am not going any further than that because I don't like those three-letter agencies.
Let's jump to the next article. Europe doesn't need U.S. gas, but it might anyway. Interesting. So what Donald Trump here is talking about is pushing EU countries to buy more U.S. shipped gas. There are reasons that Europe, as this article says, is considering taking the bait, but each of them come at the price. High line, top line is, basically it's a price that could be, it's a way for smoother relations with the United States. I'll kind of read the top line, kind of the big bullets, and then we'll dive into each one. So one, they're saying that this is a price Europe's willing to pay for smoother relations. Interesting. They're also saying that new dependencies and the lessening climate concern has led them to this, and also their de-reliance on specifically piped gas from Russia. So, at a top line, I think what they're saying is, hey, yes, Europe would love to take U.S. natural gas, and there are reasons for that. But at the end here, what it basically says is, well, there may be more at play than just that, because they may not actually need the LNG, and that U.S. and specifically EU demand for LNG may have already peaked. So guys, give you an idea, to this day, the U.S. currently exports about 50% of its LNG that flows through its export facilities to Europe, and imports of U.S. LNG has filled all of the factories and allowed them to kind of stay up and running since the 2022 invasion. But the EU gas consumption since 2022 has tumbled 13.3% and 7.4%. Leading analysts to wonder, is this, have we seen peak gas demand in Europe? I actually take the other side of the argument and say, well, it's because prices have risen so much to where people are cutting back. I mean, it's so cheap. Energy is so cheap here, specifically in Texas. And I leave my lights on when I leave. I keep my AC on or my heat on, depending on what time of year it is. But that's because I'm paying, 6 cents, 8 cents a kilowatt hour. If I was paying $1 per kilowatt hour, yeah, I'd probably have things shut down. I wouldn't have 9 screens in front of me, TV going in the back, heat on, AC, flipping to AC and heat back and forth. I would, again, the free market, the supply and demand curve, when prices rise so high, we see demand fall, which then shifts price down, or which then shifts supply down, aka falling gas consumption. So I don't necessarily know if this is a trend. I think we need more than 2 years of data, especially since in 2022, it's been a little crazy with the war. But we did see in 2024 that that LNG imports to the EU did decline to the previous year, which basically there was a network of LNG terminals along Europe's western coastline that went fairly underutilized. We also did see a warm winter and a weakened economy. Again, a weakened economy. I come back to the warm weather. Some of that's out of control, so maybe it was just 2 warmer winters that we needed. We was actually a little cold, not in 24, but in 23 and 22 it was really cold. So again, interesting counterpoints here. And then, the other side of this article points out is the supply side. We talked about the demand side, but the supply side of that, if the IEA is correct, they're predicting a global glut of gas, which is 50% more LNG that should be than will be needed around the world by 2030, which is mainly driven by the expansion both in the United States but also Qatar. So very interesting there. It goes on to talk about, I mentioned, the counterpoints to the rising demand, or the lowering of demand and rising of supply, which is, both highly cyclical, is that they may just go back to U.S. LNG specifically for smoother relations with not just the Trump administration, but with the United States, and also the lessening effect of climate and climate concerns. And we've known about these LNG deliveries for long. Qatar is signing 30, 50, 100-year deals to supply gas. So I think this is very interesting. It's a great breakdown, in my opinion, of yes, the EU probably does want U.S. gas, but will they need it and for how long? And, obviously things change and you need to be planning 30 years in the future. So, some of this stuff, taking a lot of the short term data and trying to extrapolate it, I think can be interesting, but we will see that. Q4 earnings are here. We always start with oilfield service, and today we get Halliburton. They post quarter-on-quarter income rise on a net income of $615 million for the fourth quarter. That was actually compared to $571 for the third quarter of the year, though it was actually below its $667 million quarter reported from a year ago. So they're actually down year over year, but up quarter over quarter. Usually I like comparing year-to-year quarters versus, Q3 to Q4, because cyclical in terms of, companies maybe, in the oil and gas space tend to spend more in Q4 than they do in Q3, especially because they find out if there's a surplus or low on budget, or they're trying to hit production targets. There's a lot of that stuff there. So generally you'll see Q3 softer than Q4. So the fact that Q4 2024 was down from Q4 2023 shows me that things have softened a little bit. Total revenue for the year was 22.9, which is actually, or 22.9 billion with a B. That was actually flat year over year. Operating income was 3.8 billion. Compare that to 2023 on a full year at 4.1 billion. Net income attributable to Halliburton for the full year landed at 2.5 billion, which was below the 2.64 billion that was reported in 2023. CEO, President, Chairman Jeff Miller, I'm pleased with our performance in 2024. We had generated 2.6 billion of free cash flow and a return of 1.6 billion of cash to our shareholders. While we expect 2025 to be sequentially softer in North America, we begin the second half of this decade in great position with transformed balance sheet, leading returns, and strong cash flow. So again, I take out of this, oilfield service does a better job of predicting demand than oil and gas operators, because their revenue in the oilfield service side absolutely depends on it. Yeah, oil and gas company, what they do this year really affects next year. They aren't as accurate as somebody who is in the oil field service space. So, it's pretty interesting. Halliburton coming in, they did drop a little bit in terms of price, in terms of their stock. They're down about 0.25 percentage point as the time recording here. So obviously they're taking it in the shorts here, but it'll be interesting to see how they jump in. And obviously with that softer 2025, we will see.
Russian LNG exports hits a whole new high. EU purchased more than half of the volumes despite vows to eliminate dependence on the sanctioned energy country. Russia exported 33 million tons of LNG last year, and more than half of that went to the EU market. The figure represents a 4% increase from the previous record of 32.9 million tons set in 2022. And this is even with having an expansion unit to the Arctic LNG not online. The EU accounted for approximately 17.4 million tons, or 52% of the Russians' total LNG. France, Spain, Belgium, and the Netherlands were the largest buyers of Russian LNG. Again, this goes back to we need to have low-cost natural gas around the world. And if we realize that the Ukraine war was brought on by the management of the EU and the management of NATO, as well as Russia. I'm not throwing anybody saying anybody's innocent here, but let's end this. Let's end this fight and let's get it all negotiated. And President Putin, if you've listened to my podcast with George McMillan and everything else, it's all about land power versus sea power, and what the United States and what the EU have tried to negotiate and keep Russia from monetizing their energy wealth. And he was able to anyway. So let's just end this and let's everybody get back to it, because if Germany does not get low cost Russian energy, Russian natural gas soon, they will finish. The Green New Party will be extremely happy because they will have been fully industrialized. And so goes Germany, so goes the EU. We need, honestly, for President Trump to be able to say he's ending the Ukraine war. So the Democrats don't say, oh, you lost the Ukraine war and now you've lost the EU. They're going to blame this on President Trump when he inherited an absolute abysmal situation. Planet Earth's natural resources are limited to its 8 billion residents. There are four key points that this Ronald Stein article has. Earth has existed for more than 4 billion years without the present day humans. I'm not sure that we actually know our true history. Crude oil consumption is more than 35 billion years per year, with less than 50 years of known oil reserves. I still believe in my heart that there is a lot of oil that is still left to be discovered. Coal consumption is more than 8 billion tons per year, with less than 135 years left of known coal reserves. Natural gas consumption is more than 132 million cubic feet per year, with about 50 years left of natural gas reserves. I think there's a lot more than that. Similar scenarios for the exotic minerals like lithium, cobalt, magnesium, and copper need to go green with EV batteries. And this one I thoroughly agree with. There's a lot of things that we can do, and that would be putting in nuclear everywhere. The United States has been running nuclear capable fleet for ever since 1955. Why don't we go ahead and start moving everything to nuclear ships? There are some real things that we could do with nuclear and protect and expand this out. The new technologies that are coming around the corner, I think, could really reduce the amount of fuel, of oil and gas that we do use, and coal. And there is just, but we've got to get out of the way of government, and we've got to take a look at renewable wind and solar and say, wait a minute, they may not actually be the best tools to use. You always want to pick your best tool and use it. Nuclear is by far the best tool, but we can't get there. And so, in the short run, natural gas is our best tool to use for power plants because it is the least pollution out there. So, outstanding shout out to Ronald Stein for his article there.